Hi, this is a short video on a new tool called consolez. It's for Linux and ZVM on the mainframe to view ZVM consoles from a browser and run certain VM commands. The first section, the first part that I'm going to do are these charts, and then we'll look at the command line interface in an SSH session, and finally we'll get to the web user interface, which is hopefully the best part. What is the business problem? Why did this tool get written? The networking team at our organization needs access to certain ZVM consoles and the ability to run some CP commands. So how to give the correct access and make it easy to use? And one answer is with many 3270 consoles, but a web user interface to give the team members just the right access to the consoles they need and the commands they need. And a key point is to seek lightweight context switches. So if the networking team needs to get certain information from 10 different ZVM LPARs, would it be better to have 10 different sessions open, or would there be more lightweight context switches from a single browser interface? So the prototype is called consolez with a Z, and the trailing Z implies system Z, which is the mainframe. So let's look at the architecture very quickly. This is two Linux servers on two ZVM LPARs. You come in through a browser. So HTTPD is the Apache web server running on a Red Hat Linux. And spool cons is a bash script that does the heavy lifting. It utilizes VMCP to talk to CP and run CP commands, and VMUR to get information from the ZVM virtual reader. So also the CP4 command allows CP to run a command for another user, and spool is what spools the console. So if you say CP for another user, spool the console back to this virtual machine, it comes into the reader and gets put in the data structure. Now that works fine if you're on the LPAR, if you want to spool a console of a virtual machine on the LPAR that you're running on. But what if you want to do another? Then the code utilizes SSH to call the same function, same script, spoolcons, which does the exact same steps, but rather than copying it to a data structure on that machine, it SCPs a temporary file, and this spoolcons then finishes by copying that to the same data structure. So in this fashion, all of the console data goes to the same directory. And I should mention that LDAP authentication and authorization is in effect, so I'll talk more about that later. What are the command line interface scripts? Again, spoolcons is the heavy lifter, but also catcons for printing a single console, remove cons, and lscons, where lscons lists all the saved files, and catcons prints a single console. There's also a CP command script to run one CP command and common functions. The CGI script, consolez with a Z, is the main page. That's the one you're going to want to bookmark. And then it's pretty lightweight. There's one cons, which shows us a web page showing a single console, one LPAR showing all of the user IDs who have console data saved, CP commands to run CP commands, common functions, and some cascading style sheets. What is the data structure? It's very simple. /data is where a large logical volume is, and the directory, so the base directory is /data/consoles, and very simply, each directory under there is a ZVM LPAR with an environment, or think data center, as a prefix. And then very simply, in each of those directories, a console file is the same as the file name for the user ID. How do you configure this consolez? It's fairly easy. There's not a lot of configuration. You specify the directory where the data will be stored. The consolez user, this is important, I didn't mention this. When we talk about SSHing and SCPing between machines, the requirement is that you have one user ID, hopefully not root, with passwordless SSH enabled. So the systems need to be able to SSH back and forth. Then the remaining values in the config file define your ZVM LPARs in your environment. So in this example, there's a ZSS or development environment which has 3 ZVM LPARs. So these are the ZVM system identifiers, and these are the corresponding Linux, we call them engineering servers. And Hill or QA has 4 LPARs. So that's for the command line, but also for the web UI, you specify what the network administrator's GID is, and then regular admin GID. I'll talk more about that. And also, netadmin IDs lists the virtual machines that the network administrators need to see, and then there's only a dozen here. Okay. So enough charts. Future work will be to prune, because those files are going to get filled up. So you might move data that's out too old or too long and move it out of that directory to free up space. Search, once you have all of your consoles in one directory, it's easy to search. And I'd like to put this code on github.com. I'd like to package it into an RPM. I'd like to make a Redbook-like documentation, but that's still coming. How to get it? It is actually out on the internet as of today, Christmas Day 2020. There's a tiny URL. If you want just the code, you can write that down, but there will be more ways to get it. Okay, enough charts. Let's go to an SSH session. So I mentioned lscons. That lists the console data that has been stored. So the first field is the ZVM system identifier, but also prefixed by the environment. And then simply every other entry after that is all of the virtual machines which have console files. So how do you spool a console? Let's do this. Let's go to a ZVM session. I'm on ZSO1 here. We'll go to ZSO1, and I'm just going to do QT query time. So it's 10 past 11, and now I'm going to do spool cons, and that's my ID that I was just on, and it's done. Okay, so if we say cat cons, that will show the entire spool file. So you saw there was a lot of data that went by, but you see that it was spooled at 11:10, and there's my query time output. So that info that just went to the console has been captured and is now saved on Linux. Okay, what if you, okay, so that's when you have a virtual machine on this LPAR, but if you want to get it from another LPAR, you simply add a second argument of the target LPAR. So this is going to go across to a different virtual machine. It took a little bit longer, and then we're going to, I didn't do a query time, but we can see that so there was no new console data found, right? So I had spooled the console recently, and I haven't done anything, so there's nothing to show there. All right, that's enough of the SSH command line interface. Let's get to the browser interface. And I was supposed to show you one thing. Let me show you one thing. If I do vi cons UI funcs and go to the bottom, you'll see we are admins, and our GIDs are 1041. I'm simulating a network administrator by setting this to 1041, and the code says, well, if the GID matches the net admin first, then you're a net admin. So right now I'm a network admin, I'm not a full admin. So you'll see there were probably about 20 virtual machines for which console data has been saved on ZSO1, but this is only showing 7, and that's because the network administrators have a limited view. So we can look at console data for TCP/IP, and that was spooled fairly recently, but guess what? Right from a web button, a browser button, you can spool. So you don't have to get a 3270 session, you don't have to get an SSH session. We just spooled that network information at 1112. Okay, so let's go back. And as well as drilling down into a single console, remember one cons was that script, you can drill down into a LPAR. Now, full admins will have more than 12 or 13 virtual machines, so there'll be more than one line. But you can also, network admins can also go in and drill down to run CP commands. So there are just a small set of CP commands like query vSwitch that they need to be able to run. So that query vSwitch was on the fly, and I'm looking at it, but I don't have enough information. So I know that query vSwitch details gives me some more information that I'm looking for. And again, oops, let me go home. Again, you can hop around to multiple LPARs. We've authenticated once. I should have shown myself authenticating, but I was challenged the first time I went in here, and I had to supply my LDAP credentials. All right, so that's enough from the network admin, but let's change this back to the network admins are really 1042. Oops, changing a read-only file. Bear with me. Exit. Okay, now we can have it read right. So we're going to change that to the real GID, which is 1042, and we're going to save that. And then hopefully, watch what happens. When I redraw, it now reads my GID as 1041, and it's not a network admin, it's a full admin. So you see, I'm seeing all of the virtual machines for which there is saved console data. And you'll notice there's a second table that's being shown. This is user IDs that do not have any console data saved yet. So let's do this, DSS 00281. So we're spooling the console, and now we have captured. So let's go back to home, 281, right? And there's 281. So when I drill down into here, 281 is no longer in this list because we now have saved console data for it. Okay, and finally, the CP commands, where the network administrators can only issue a small subset of CP commands. As full admins, we can issue any CP command. So that is the demo of consoles. Again, this code is just put up on the internet at my Google Sites page, which I've been maintaining for a while, and it's just very small entry. We have a PPTX, which are the charts that I was showing, and the code is TGZ. There's about 20 or so source files. So that is my demo. I hope you have enjoyed it.